All right, so the internet is once again accusing a rap legend of being a snitch, but this time it's not coming from another rapper or from a blogger. It's supposedly coming from an FBI agent. Over the last few days, a video started making rounds online where a man claiming to be a retired federal agent basically implied that Young Jeezy cooperated with the feds back in the mid 2000s. This FBI agent's name is Steve Lazarus, but he is also an author of crime fiction books. Keep that in mind as we go over this story. In this viral clip, Steve never mentions Jeezy by name, but the way that he tells the story, it's obvious who he's talking about. He describes a famous rapper who ordered a hit on another rapper. His crew ran up, one of them got killed, and the feds had enough evidence for a RICO, but the case suddenly disappeared. People heard the story and immediately connected the dots between Young Jeezy, Gucci Mane, and Pookie Loc, who Gucci Mane shot and killed after Pookie Loc tried to rob him of his chain. I'm going to assume you guys are familiar with the story. It's been told a million times. I am not going to reiterate the Young Jeezy versus Gucci story right here in this video. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it, but here's where it gets kind of crazy. This isn't a random fan theory. This is a theory that's been floating around online for a long time now, pretty much since the entire thing went down. Blue Da Vinci, who was a member of BMF. BMF was a notorious drug crew that operated in the 90s and early 2000s. It was headed by Big Meech. Big Meech was eventually indicted, sentenced to prison. And this story by Steve, the FBI agent, basically suggests that Jeezy himself was seconds away from being indicted on a RICO and murder case, the exact same one that ended Pookie Loc's life, until something behind the scenes made the feds drop it completely. Now, whether or not this guy is telling the truth, who knows? He is a retired FBI agent, but he is also a crime fiction author. Whether there's any truth behind what he's saying, like I said, who knows? But this clip has people questioning, did Jeezy cooperate with the feds? Or is this just another internet reach from a guy who's trying to sell books? Here's the clip that started all of this.
Yeah, I'm not going to say the guy's name because he's pretty famous, and to be fair, he was never charged with a crime. But we had these two rappers in Atlanta in the early 2000s, and they were beefing with each other, trading diss tracks, the whole thing. Then rapper number one, the famous one, orders his goons to go beat up rapper number two and steal this gaudy gold and diamond necklace he wore in all of his videos, and that's where it got interesting. The goon squad shows up at rapper number two's place. He pulls a gun and starts shooting. One of the attackers gets hit, makes it about 200 yards away from the house before he drops dead. Rapper number two is arrested for murder, but is dismissed as self-defense. And the real criminal here is rapper number one, who ordered the violent act that got his man killed. I had the phone records and two witnesses prepared to testify for what would have been a rock-solid RICO murder case. But for reasons that were never explained to me, the U.S. Attorney's Office declined prosecution, and rapper number one went on to have a phenomenally successful career. Oh well, win some, lose some.
All right, so that's the clip that's been going viral, and you can see why people are reacting the way that they are. You got a man who claims to be a former FBI agent straight up saying that a rapper was part of a federal case that just disappeared. In other words, he calls it pretty much the one who got away. Now, the first thing I'll say is this. Anyone who's been around long enough knows how stories like this can get twisted over time, especially when you're talking about BMF, one of the most high-profile criminal organizations to ever be tied to hip-hop. But here's why the internet ran with it. The way that Steve Lazarus describes the situation, every single detail matched up with Jeezy's past, the city, the era, even the beef that turned deadly. And once people put that together, it started to look like confirmation of a rumor that's been floating around for years, that Jeezy somehow cooperated when the feds were circling in on BMF. Now, the problem is there's zero paperwork backing this claim up. No case files, no indictments, no court records, nothing that shows Jeezy ever took the stand or gave up information. All we got is this man's word, which, if we're being real, is kind of shaky. Because if you notice in that clip, he's careful not to say names. He keeps it vague. And that's what leaves people guessing. Now, he did like some comments on his post on Instagram where people were saying that this was about Jeezy and Gucci Mane. But it's hard to discredit what he's saying, because there's one thing that really has never been in question, and that's that Jeezy was really outside in the early 2000s. He wasn't just rapping about it. Before Def Jam, before TM 101, before the snowman shirts. Jeezy had already built a name in the street. So when people say, why would BMF be around him? The next clip I'm about to play answers that. Jeezy himself has said multiple times in interviews that he was basically running his own network before rap blew up for him. I'm talking about 10, 15, 20 counties. His words, not mine. That's why BMF saw him as somebody worth doing business with, because he wasn't just a rapper in the room. He was a man who understood both sides of the game.
I just grew up from there to like taking over all these surrounding counties. So anybody that know me, like we going down now, anybody that know me from that era can tell you, like I ran, 10, 15, 20 counties around me as a kid. You know what I'm saying? Like a real operation. My aunties and uncles and cousins, everybody know this. Like it was like a family business. Like I ran all these counties and I grew from that to, damn near taking over Georgia, and I moved from that to South Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee. So I was really running a Fortune 500 company at, 19, 20, 21.
Now, let's be real. This whole Jeezy might have cooperated story didn't just come out of thin air. People have been whispering about it for forever, ever since BMF's indictments first dropped. Because when the feds first came through and took down basically everyone connected to that organization, a lot of people were shocked that Jeezy's name was never in the paperwork, especially considering how close he was to Meech and how often he shouted out BMF in his records and how deep he was moving in Atlanta during that time. And this is something that Blue Da Vinci has spoke about over the years. Before this Steve Lazarus clip ever hit the internet, Blue had already been on record hinting that something didn't add up with how Jeezy got out of the situation clean, right? Blue Da Vinci was a member of BMF. He's one of the people that was sitting on the front lines when the Fed circled in. He was in the indictments. He went to prison with everybody. So when Blue Da Vinci was speaking, a lot of people listened a little bit differently. And now that this clip of Steve Lazarus saying all this has surfaced, people have been going back and rewatching Blue Da Vinci interviews, and they feel like Blue was talking about the same thing that this FBI agent just described.
Was Jeezy in the paperwork?
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's public information. You can look up right now on your phone. Man testifies about Jeezy's cocaine selling. Type in your phone something like that. You're going to see one of the who name it Lights. Ralph Sims, the same that told about the limo that tried to say I told. Ralph Sims, Ralphie. Told on Jeezy, told everything Jeezy ever did. Jeezy had like 12, Jeezy had more statements on him than me. What you talking about? But nah, he didn't get indicted because he did some more other shit. I feel like that. I know some things he did, like he turned Meech cars into the feds. The same Porsche truck and that Ferrari I was talking about a while before, came to Miami and doing some lie detector tests about this gun case he caught one year in 06 when I went to go meet him. We had a shootout, not against him, but some other, like when me and him start trying to talk, some other popped it off with us and we end up having a shootout and he ended up going to jail for a gun. If anybody is familiar with that Miami case, him and Twin came back to do a polygraph test supposed to be for that shit. And the security said that the Meech cars pulled up on flatbeds, nigga, into the federal building when he went and did it, when he was inside for his meeting or whatever. So I know he turned in the cars. Ain't no telling what people be doing, bro. That's all I know he did. And then he told about the gun case that was already thrown out at the state level, and then the feds picked it back up. So everybody look up Big House. You look up Big House. He was a security for Jay-Z. He was a security for Big Meech. He was also security for Young Jeezy. Yeah, Jeezy put the people on his ass, and he'll let you know. If you look him up, he talking his story, and you got all these people with these accounts of these people that's out here. Sorry, y'all, I just be the bearer of bad news because 10 years go by and people act like they ain't never heard nothing, don't know nothing. Like, hold on, the selective politics shit got to stop.
Now, you heard what Blue said right there in that clip. He claimed that Jeezy actually turned in cars and other things connected to this federal case against BMF. That's heavy stuff because if it's true, it would mean that Jeezy was actively cooperating with the same people who were trying to bring down BMF. But here's the thing. Blue Da Vinci has been saying stuff like this for years. This isn't some new revelation that just came out because of the FBI video. If you followed this story for a while, you know Blue Da Vinci has been calling Jeezy out since the mid-2010s, right after he got out of prison. The problem is, back then, then, most people just didn't take Blue Da Vinci seriously. A lot of fans and blogs brushed it off as jealousy. They looked at it as Blue was being bitter because his career never took off while Jeezy became a superstar and went legit. And honestly, from the outside looking in, that's kind of how it looked. One guy was doing time while the other one was on TV performing with Jay-Z. It's easy for people to assume that it was just resentment on Blue's behalf. But over time, Blue has started giving specific examples of why he felt like something wasn't right with Jeezy. He wasn't just talking out of emotion. He started naming real events, real moves in the business, and things that made him question Jeezy's loyalty. One of the main examples that he brought up while he did his Cam Capone interview was a record that he did with Jeezy that he tried to release. According to Blue, Jeezy refused to sign off on this record, and this was one of the moments that made him think, yeah, this dude might really be working with them people, because he seen it as this was Jeezy trying to distance himself from anything BMF related.
And I pushed the record out. It was on Koch. It was getting promoted and all the shit. It was getting promoted correctly. All the numbers was right. I was like 300 and some spins a week on my BDS at the time. And I got a call from my team. It was like, bro, they talking about, it was like a Tuesday. I think it was a Tuesday, if I am mistaken. I was on the road on my tour bus, and I got a call from my team, and they said that on Thursday, in 2 days, they gonna pull the record from radio if they don't get Jeezy and CTE signature. They wasn't signed off for the record. So I like, what? I'm like, all right, hold on, bro. Let me call this and blah, blah, blah. So I called it. And this wasn't the first time I called him about that. It was already mentioned before they dropped the shit. So they dropped it, and we still didn't have the signatures. And I think it was dropped on good faith that we was going to get the signatures from Alan Grunblatt at Koch. They got the shit. They worked it out with Clear Channel or whatever. So, you know what I'm saying? So the record could stay up there, and they was telling them they going to have the paperwork or however it went. But them motherfuckers, I called Jeezy. He swear up and down to God in heaven. He signed off and all this shit. But I had my signature. Then my signature for BMF Entertainment as the owner. Then we had Alan Nim's signature from Koch. Then we had John Jackson, which is a fabulous name as an individual, fabulous, the artist. Then we had Skane and Clue for Desert Storm was signed off. I had those signatures. I saw them with my eyes. Then I think I had, at this time, was Jay Brown's signature from Def Jam. He was the vice president of Def Jam at that time. I believe his signature was on my record for Def Jam.
We came from like him coming to the house and chilling, borrowing the whips and borrowing cars and getting work from the homie. And, you know what I'm saying, from that to him, like, he'll beat spots and we want to pull up and he curve us, you feel me? You know, Def Jam, at that point, Def Jam was scarred. They didn't want no more people that coming through their offices that can potentially, they get, you know what I'm saying, caught up with the feds with. So they was pressuring Jeezy. I didn't know at the time. I'm on my, man, we done gave this dude money and I produced the records and he ain't clearing them, f*** him. But like I say, he got away from us as far as like, you know, at that point when he started rolling, his career started going like this, he was told to not affiliate with us like that. You know what I'm saying? He was told that.
Now, this is where we get into one of the most dramatic parts of Blue Da Vinci's testimony, the moment where things allegedly went from words to bullets. Because listen, it's one thing to claim somebody was cooperating and turning cars over. It's another thing entirely when you bring guns, showing up in person, and confrontation into the picture. That's when theories turn into real conflict. And Blue says on one occasion, he drove up to meet with Jeezy to confront him. And what was supposed to be a discussion actually turned into a shootout. So in this next clip, you'll hear exactly how Blue describes that moment, how he got to Jeezy, what sparked it, how things escalated, and how this eventually led to him believing that Jeezy was in fact cooperating. Let's roll the clip.
And I talked to him like, bro, where you at? I'm just finna pull up. I left my tour route and drove the bus all the way to Miami to go have a conversation with Jeezy about the record being signed off. And that's when that shootout happened that I was just talking about previously. I went to talk to him about that record. That's what the conversation was about. I was coming to meet him and confront him about the shit with all of this shit with me. And as soon as we start talking, Tula was walking down the street with dreads and they're like, oh shit, there go Jeezy, dog. And I was like, oh, and Blue. That Jeezy and Blue, nigga, that's BMF right there, nigga. Oh, bro, let us get a picture. And then my little cousin twin, big twin, he like, oh, nigga, they ain't taking no picture. You see they trying to talk? So the little like, well, and then the twin fired him, boom. And that's what started that shit that ended up to the shootout. And me and him never talked about the record right there because that fight turned into a shootout, turned into we all ran, turned into Jeezy got locked up for the gun. And then later on, Jeezy went back to have a polygraph test about that situation. That was all about that day I went to meet him to talk about why he ain't sign off on my record with me, him, and Jeezy, and they pulled it from the radio. And I believe he couldn't because the feds had jacked him and told him, nigga, if you help these niggas, and the same reason why he couldn't do the deal with us. Same reason why he couldn't put his name on the contract, because the contract ensues help to BMF, and they struck his ass down and told him they were going to put your ass in prison. If you continue to help Big Meech and Blue in that BMF shit, you're going to fully pull away from that shit. Like, there ain't nobody else stopped quitting the mob. He the only in history that just stopped claiming the mob.
So there you have it. That's the story that's got the streets and internet buzzing right now. We started with an alleged FBI agent claiming that Jeezy cooperated and avoided a RICO indictment. We've looked at Jeezy's own words about how deep he was in the streets and why BMF would even want to work with him in the first place. We've heard from Blue Da Vinci, someone who's been calling Jeezy out for years, detailing everything from the cars to the record dispute, all the way to the shootout that led to him believing Jeezy cooperated. Now, whether you believe Jeezy ever cooperated or not is totally up to you. There's a lot of speculation here, but there's one thing that's clear, and that's that his past connections and his street reputation created a situation where these questions would always follow him, right? There's nothing solid here. The FBI agent didn't provide any paperwork or anything that said that Jeezy cooperated, but I mean, it is an FBI agent. If you were going to take the word of anybody on something like this, I would assume that an FBI agent's word would be the most trustworthy source. But because this dude is an author, he's trying to sell books, crime books. That does make me a little skeptical of what he's saying because, you know, people like that, they would do anything to drum up a little attention to get more sales on books that they're releasing. But that's what we got. That's the situation. What do y'all think? Did Jeezy give information to the feds, or is this all just hearsay? Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about it. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, tap the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. And as always, it's been fun rocking with y'all, man. I'm out.